President Obama says that 4 years ago he said that he would not be a perfect president, and he says that's probably what he is. Now that is, I would say, not such a wise comment to make at the end of a debate. And overall, taking the debate as a whole, there were some loopholes in the sense that many criticized that the moderator was not strict enough, he was weak, and Mitt Romney basically controlled the show. So, leaving that aside, shall we just focus specifically on Mr. Obama's performance at the debate, starting off with some of the economic and healthcare suggestions, or rather the policies that he suggested?
Well, when you're talking about Obama's performance, I think we can better talk about Mitt Romney's performance as a reflection of Obama's. But he was very well prepared, Governor Romney. He knew what he had to do at the presidential debate. Everybody thought he wasn't really going to do very well before the debate, and he came very well prepared and seemed very authoritative in the things that he was saying. Now, what people say in the aftermath, people who fact-checked what both of them said, was that Mitt Romney contradicted some of the policies and some of the statements that he had made before in the campaign, and that President Obama didn't really contradict him on the spot. He left it for other people to do so afterwards, mainly reporters, to do the fact-checking for him afterwards, and people were wondering why he kept so silent. As you saw in the video, he was looking down a lot. He never really confronted Romney. They never really got into an argument as such. It's supposed to be a debate, and there really was no debate, and it was just statement after statement, and you saw the clip of the final statements as well. And some people were saying they didn't even know if President Obama had really thought about a final statement, whereas Mitt Romney had really seemed to think about what he was going to say.
And even at the start of the debate, in the opening segment, he was very clear-cut on his 5 principles for the economy, and also mentioning about, people were saying that the confidence level of the president had drastically changed from way back in 2008. Now, Mitt Romney, it was the first time that he was getting up on stage, but he pulled it off pretty well. Now, in your opinion, do you think that this is probably the biggest costly mistake or costly affair that Mr. Obama had in his run, or do you share the general view that he's not really been making significant impacts with his speeches right throughout?
President Obama, you mean?
Yes.
I do think this will have some kind. I mean, we've seen in the polls it has had some effect in the president's momentum. But the other thing that you have to remember is last Friday, which was the day after the debates, the jobs report came out last Friday, which showed a drop in unemployment rates to 7.8. It's the first time it has gone below 8% in the last 3 years or so. So that was a huge boom for the Democratic side. Now, in the same light, you've got people saying, there was for a little bit of a period right after the report came out, you had some people saying that perhaps the statistics were doctored, and things like this. This conversation came out in the media as well. But the ultimate fact is the Bureau of Labor Statistics has put out this report saying that the jobs numbers are improving, which means unemployment rates are decreasing. They've added about 114,000 jobs in the past month or so. So they can really use that, and I'm sure Vice President Biden is doing that right now as we speak in the vice presidential debate, using these positive numbers to counter President Obama's weak performance in the debate.
It's very interesting that you mentioned the vice presidential debate that is happening right now, and we will have a bit of an update later on as we continue our discussion. Now, once again, coming back to the specifics. Now, you said, especially, I think it was CNN that mentioned that no president has been re-elected with an 8%, with a more than 8% unemployment rate. And do you think that this change of statistics is going to really maybe change the tables once again?
I think it could. I think it could help President Obama keep that momentum going until the very end. But then again, you don't know what's going to happen in the next 3 weeks. Anything could happen. Right. Certain things could, turn the tables one way or another. And keeping in mind that the polls are still very close. We're not talking about huge landslide victories for either of them in the end. It's still like 48%, 47%. The margin is very close, especially in swing states, what we say, where it could go either way. Yeah. Certain key states like like Florida and Ohio and places like this, the decision is still very, very unclear. So I think it could impact whatever happens in the next 3 weeks. There could be it could be the debates, perhaps. It could be certain statements the candidates make. It could be some of these other issues that are at center stage in the U.S.
And coming back to Governor Mitt Romney's performance at the debate, obviously outshone the president. And would you like to mention some of the positives and negatives of his performance that night?
I think the biggest thing we saw was the confidence. Whereas in previous times he seemed a little uneasy when talking in public. He didn't seem to really connect, with the viewers and things like that. I think we saw, at least in my opinion, I saw kind of a different Romney when I was looking at the camera, and the way he spoke, he seemed very comfortable in the things that he was saying. And it's estimated that about 67 million people watched the debate, the presidential debate. So out of that 67 million, a large portion of the people are those who don't follow politics on a daily basis. They just happen to see the debate because it's been talked about so much. So a lot of the things that the candidates said, people at face value probably took it to be true. They don't have the time to go and fact check like journalists do. So in that sense, whoever decided to speak about whatever it is or whatever stand they decided to choose got that message across to a lot of people, which people are trying to rectify now after the fact. But the negative, or the criticism rather, people are throwing out at Mitt Romney is the fact that he said a lot of statements that contradicted himself in statements that he had said previously, especially with regards to his tax policies and so forth. He seemed almost like a moderate. Bill Clinton, I don't know if you saw this clip, but he was speaking at a rally almost like a stand-up comedian. He was, making fun of Mitt Romney and how he's almost become like a moderate, rather than the extreme Republican, a conservative that he had portrayed himself to be, I think he called himself a severe Republican or something like that, or a severe conservative in past times. But it was a very different Mitt Romney, and some people say that's why Barack Obama couldn't contradict or effectively debate him, because he wasn't expecting that from Mitt Romney. He was expecting very different statements to come out of him,
and that he could really maybe attack on.
Exactly, yeah. But he seemed to take a moderate stand. So Obama probably agreed with a lot of those things, so he couldn't counter those things.
And also, as much as we've been discussing about President Obama's performance and Governor Mitt Romney's performance, this is what President Obama had to say right after. It's been U.S. presidential elections as the main topic on Good Morning Sri Lanka today. So welcome back. We were having a chat with Anuradha Herath. As we mentioned before, let's take a look at some of the current issues and the future issues that may be discussed. I think, as we mentioned earlier, the vice presidential debate is happening right now. And the first question that was asked from them as well was the question about Libya and whether they think it was a failure in terms of intelligence and security. So what are your thoughts about the Libya issue?
I think we have to touch upon the fact that there are currently public hearings going on to find out exactly what happened in Libya. Currently, as far as the presidential debate is concerned, the debate is whether the administration had a part to play with regards to the fact that there wasn't enough security at the consulate in Benghazi in Libya, and whether they could have done more to prevent such an attack or not. We heard some security personnel talking at the hearings who said there was some problems getting more personnel, where they thought more personnel would have helped keep the compound secure. But at the same time, some people said that even if they had that kind of security, enhanced security, that this type of an attack couldn't really be avoided. And what the administration, the negative criticism that the administration is getting right now is, if you remember, right after the attack, they said it was this anti-Muslim video that came out. That was the reason. There were protests, and that was the reason that the consulate was attacked. But then in the aftermath, it came out that it really wasn't because of this anti-Muslim video. There were no protests really at that particular time, and this was a very targeted terrorist attack is what sort of came out. So people are asking, why did they give this apparent misinformation to the public? So that's where sort of the debate stands now, where the Republicans are saying the administration is not giving us all the information information that the public needs, whereas the administration is saying there isn't really anything that they could have done to avoid this type of an attack.
And talking about the hearings with concerns to Libya, we have just a short clip about one of the hearings related to the Libya incident. Going through with shortcomings in security, the topic discussed at the moment at the vice presidential debate is of Iran. And can I have some of your thoughts on how both of these combined may affect the presidential elections as well?
Right. Well, Vice President Biden and Paul Ryan were talking earlier when I was watching the debates currently taking place. They did touch upon Iran as well and Middle East issues in general. In the debate, there was that Paul Ryan and the Republicans are trying to show that there are some failings with the administration with regards to foreign policy in the past 4 years. They're saying that the Middle East has gotten more unstable. Israeli-Palestinian issue the peace process has sort of derailed. Iran, they're saying, is very close to getting a nuclear weapon, and of course this attack in Libya is also an example of how the security has failed, and they failed to protect Americans abroad. The administration is of course saying no, Iran is not very close I was watching Vice President Biden, and he was going at it, basically saying that they could be close, perhaps they're close to enriching uranium, but they don't have a weapon to put it in, and was what he was really stressing to the Republicans, and that they're creating this unnecessary sort of fear among people because they're not really close to getting a weapon yet, even though they might be close to enriching uranium as it should be for a weapon. So that was the debate that was happening in the vice presidential debate as we just started the show. But with regards to foreign policy, I think those issues are the ones that are going to be taking center stage, and President Obama can of course boast about the fact that he got bin Laden, and America is now much safer than it was when he took office, but then there are both sides of the story. He has certain failings and then he has certain accomplishments, so those are the things that both sides are going to be using as far as foreign policy. Yeah,
and also coming on to a very important topic, the votes of the women. Now we have a very contradictory perspectives put out by both contenders about abortion rights and the policies concerning women. Now, how much of this will also affect? Probably Mitt Romney in his statement said that how do you think that this will really affect the vote of the women?
Well, this issue, we're talking about it again in the campaign because recently Governor Romney had made a statement about the organization called Planned Parenthood, which it advocates basically sexual and reproductive health for women, especially underprivileged women who don't have health insurance. Then they serve a big service for various women's health-related issues, including abortion, which is where the problem really is. And they're campaigning very hard for President Obama, who is a pro-choice candidate, whereas Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan are pro-life candidates. So that's the basic difference. And women's issues have been on this campaign even earlier. President Obama's campaign has been running lots of ads in states to grab these women voters to make this a women's rights issue, basically. So Paul Ryan and Mitt Romney actually, that's what they were saying, that he's flip-flopping on some of these issues. He had actually expressed that he agrees with a woman's right to choose, with regards to abortion earlier, but now he's saying no, he's a very pro-life candidate, and Paul Ryan has gone to the extreme as saying he doesn't agree with abortion, obviously, but even in the cases of rape and incest where a woman's life might be in danger, he still doesn't agree with abortion, so that's a bit extreme, especially for women. So the Obama campaign is really trying to hype that up, hoping to attract more female voters in this election, and it could be sort of a key factor.
Yeah. And taking a look at the upcoming weeks just before the elections, what would you see as some of the critical points in where this may turn around?
Of course, I think we have to keep an eye on the debates. The presidential candidates are going to be speaking more and more in a lot of these swing states, so it will be interesting to see, what they say or don't say, or some of the mistakes they may make in public that get picked up by the media. That's one thing. And then, of course, in foreign affairs, what's happening in Libya, what these hearings produce, what we are able to find out about what the administration knew or didn't know. Those types of things might affect the race.
So there we go, a detailed look about the presidential elections and some of the key issues in that. With that, we have to say goodbye. Thanks a lot for joining us, Ms. Anuradha Herat. And do stay tuned to Good Morning Sri Lanka. We'll be back on Monday.